when you look at what he was doing when he was, arguably one of the best players in the world back in 2023 before the swing change, he was consistently gaining over a stroke per round with the driver. Like or probably around 2/3 of his events, he was gaining that much with the driver. So that's the one thing holding him back right now, but that's also the one thing that is less predictive this week. So if we're gonna play Vic, this is a great, great spot to play him, and he also fits your European mold. So I
He
I
he he is sort of the anti type of European that I was looking for, in fairness.
True. But in terms of just like guys who are used to playing in cold and are going to know their distances pretty well there. I mean, very few guys are as good at distance control as Victor Hovland.
At Mayo Experience.
AT&T Pebble Beach DFS picks and preview. FTN.com's Alex Blickle on the line. You've been joining me a ton here, Blickle, over the past few weeks, and I keep winning money, so you're going to keep coming back. I hope that the people have been winning money as well, following along with what you're doing.
Hopefully, and that sounds awesome. So, yeah, let's continue to stay on this roll, and it's a very fun week and a great golf course to talk about.
It is. We got 2 golf courses in play. It is a signature event. There is no cut. There's only 80 players in the field. Half the players are going to play Spyglass Hill with their AM partner on Thursday. Then they'll switch over to Pebble Beach Golf Links with the same AM partner. Then the AMs, Blickle, they go away on the weekend. Isn't that glorious?
It is. It's so much better than when we had to watch, coverage of like a really good golf tournament interrupted with shots from guys that don't matter, and then we'd miss like 3 really important shots as they kept doing that in the broadcast. So this is much preferred.
It's not so much that they would cut away to Bill Murray or Larry Fitzgerald or Larry the Cable Guy shanking it somehow. It's when they spend like 8 minutes breaking down the swings of these terrible players. Like, Speed's putting for birdie over here. He's going head to head with Tom Hoagie. We need to see what's happening. And then we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they'd also, take time to show the leaderboard of the amateur event. So yeah, anything that just takes away from golf shots. Like, how many times have we talked about it? You and Jeff talk about it all the time. Like, we want to see golf shots. That's what we care about.
I did put out my rant last week from the live chat, which is at 8 p.m. on Wednesday evening. If you ever have any questions about this week's tournament, you can always tune into that. We found some good markets last week. One of the viewers, shout out to whoever that guy was, found a very soft first round leader market on DraftKings last week. So that's always encouraging stuff. But trying to think through what plays at this course. We were talking a bit off air before we came on that I just looked at last year's leaderboard, and it was simply guys that play well at PGA National. That was the entire leaderboard. And this year, it doesn't seem like it's going to be all that different. There was more wind projected in the forecast last year, and that showed up. But right now, just taking a look at it, I don't see anything over 60 degrees all week. And last year, I leaned into a lot of European players because of that, and I bet you I'm doing the same thing this time.
Yeah, I like that call. There's definitely something to playing in the cold, and part of that is just like knowing your distances, right? Like if most American players are used to playing down south and they know their distances by heart in warm weather and humid weather, and now this week it's going to be colder, so they're making an adjustment, and Euros don't necessarily have to make that adjustment if that's the baseline that they're already accustomed to.
Yeah, and they have. If you play in England, you've played in these conditions before, where it might be the middle of summer, but all of a sudden it's 54 degrees and the winds are 25 miles per hour. So you have the weather, you have these goofy greens, which no one can figure out how to putt on unless you're very experienced, and then you have the wind factor that comes in off the ocean. Very difficult to predict. Would you say that the wind impacts Pebble Beach more than it affects Spyglass?
Yeah, I do believe it does. And one of the ways we have seen that is whenever we have gotten like the severe winds, it affects the scoring average a lot more at Pebble than it does at Spyglass. And so, that's something to look out for in Showdown. Like when there's no wind, Pebble is the course that you want, and you're going to get more birdies there. You're going to get more scoring opportunities overall. And then when the wind really does come, which, as you said, like it doesn't look like we're going to get that this year, but when the wind really does come, that's when maybe you don't want Pebble for Showdown because the Pebble scores are going to inflate in a way that they don't always do so over at Spyglass.
Right now, it does seem like there's a little bit of spike on Thursday, but nothing that you can really, because with only 80 players and guys split between courses, that the rounds are gonna be pretty quick. It's not like there's gonna be an overall wave. Everyone's kind of out there within a 2.5 hour period. But I will periodically keep this updated that, hey, if win ends up materializing at some point, maybe not even in showdown, but for the first day, if it looks like there is win, would you be opposed to stacking up guys starting at Spyglass or starting at Pebble Beach and running lineups that way? Not obviously for every single lineup that you go through, but if you played, let's say, 50 lineups that like 10 of them are Spyglass only guys on Thursday, then you mix and match the rest of the way.
Yeah, I have no issue doing that sort of thing, and part of that is just an acknowledgement that like it's hard to predict weather, and it's also one of those scenarios where like just just randomly sometimes it seems in a way that we can't predict, one course or one split is going to end up playing a little bit easier than the other, and so you just luck into some positive correlation that way. And that type of strategy, like there isn't really a downside to it, right? Like there's at the worst case scenario, you're just eliminating some guys from the opportunity to be in your lineup, but you're going to get them another lineup. So there's really no harm in doing that, and you can luck into a nice correlation situation.
It's like the people that do the reverse good win stacks at the Open Championship or that year at the Players Championship when Cam Young won. That if you just simply done the reverse stack of the obvious win wave, and then because they canceled play, and then put all of the guys that were supposed to be in the good wave out in the bad wave, you just printed money with Lahiri and Cam Smith.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but that was also like exactly what happened with the Players when it got like totally flooded that first day.
Was that the same players?
Oh, I thought you said the Open. Maybe
No,
I just
no, there
misheard
was
you.
one at the Open. There was one at there was the Cam Smith Players was the one where that happened. They had guys
Yeah.
delayed like 2 days.
Yeah, it was crazy, and like everybody, that was probably the highest like rate of full stacking that I'd ever seen. Now it's always low, but like that time it actually got over 5%, 6-0, and it was well under 1% on the other side, and that ended up being the way to go. So yeah, just always kind of lean into the unpredictability and the variance of weather, and in this scenario, like if you're wrong, if nothing shows up, it's different from that players, because being quote unquote wrong doesn't mean that you're now at a big disadvantage because the weather turned out the way you expected. If the weather turns out the way expected, you're just not at a disadvantage and you have no advantage. There's no harm in trying it.
I like that approach to a lot of tournaments, honestly, that if you can luck yourself into a good weather wave, and listen, I'm probably the biggest perpetrator of this, is talking out of my ass when it comes to wind. I'm looking at the radar, so I'm looking at the wind projections, and boom. Like last week, it really did depend on where you looked of what was going to be spiking and what was going to be not spiking, but those gusts of winds that were supposed to materialize on Thursday just simply didn't show up. It actually showed up more in the afternoon than the morning.
Yeah, and I think like last week was a really good just kind of standard bearer where you can always like look at that and say, okay, well, what did I learn from that week? And to me, it was we had a weather forecast that was full of uncertainty. As you said, like every single like wind model that you looked at was saying something a little bit different. So there was a ton of uncertainty, and we did see ownership move heavily in favor of that wave. And so it wasn't that like, 5% of the field was going 6-0 or all lineups were going to be really heavy, but it made someone who was projecting at 15% who was in the good wave, they got bumped to 20%. Someone who was projected at 15% in the quote unquote bad wave went down to 10% or 8%, something like that. So if you just kind of consistently across the board said, all right, well, I'm actually going to go against the field here, you got some really good plays that the industry had like already identified as, hey, this is a good play. He deserves to be chalky, and now you got him at pretty low ownership. So it was a really good week, I think, to just kind of fade it because we had so much uncertainty in that weather forecast to begin with.
On the research show this week, I went over a lot of the key ranges. We went back and looked at a lot of the stats over the years. And the biggest outlier, and this is what I wanted to really get you to hammer down on with your course fit model, is Rory overpowered this course a year ago. And that is simply not the way that people have won at this course in the past. Now, he putted the lights out. He hit his approaches very well. But just when you just take a look at what he did off the tee versus everyone else who was near the top of that leaderboard, it was staggering how much a driver was a weapon for him last year. But that feels like such an outlier that I would never bank on that again here.
Yeah, and to your point, distance and accuracy here are both less predictive than usual coming off, Scottsdale, where both were more predictive than usual. So a big adjustment in that regard to the course fit model this week. But we talked a little bit about this ahead of time, where like all course fit analysis, what it's doing is saying on average, what do these stats like? How do these stats translate, or how do these skills translate into success at the course? But Rory's driver is not average, right? And so when you have an outlier skill set, you can get an outlier effect from that skill set. Rory saw it last year, but I very much agree with you that that's not typically what we're going to see, because there are other guys who hit the ball extremely long and extremely straight. I think that was just a case of his driving that week was so ridiculously good that it was like a 98th percentile outcome for him as well, not just for all players, but that was as well as he can drive the ball. And then you're you're always going to get a big effect from that. But this is a course where putting matters quite a bit. And one thing I found that's kind of really interesting from a course fit perspective here is, on average, iron play and around the green play, they don't matter a ton. They're slightly below average. But when you're looking at spike potential, like how often or what's required to get a top 10 finish, now all of a sudden iron play and around the green play do matter a little bit more than usual. So that's an interesting wrinkle here at Pebble Beach.
Who do you think are the players over the past year in strokes gained approach that the percentage of rounds that they have gained 3 or more strokes on approach in a single round? Like, who are the guys who do that the most often?
Wow. 3 in a single round or 3 in an event?
3 in a single round.
Oh, man.
There's
Hovland?
Hovland is number 4 on that list. He does it
Okay.
right around 10% of the time.
Scottie?
Scottie's number 1. That's around 13% of the time.
Man, now it gets a little bit tricky. I'm going to go Morikawa. But I don't think that's right.
Morikawa's 3rd.
Okay. Sepp Straka?
Straka is not inside the top 10, but you're sniffing around the right type of guy who did come second
Okay.
here last year.
Oh, I forget this leaderboard last year.
It's
Man.
a PGA National special. He's never won though.
Lowry?
It's Lowry at number 2, and then Akshay is number 3. Siwoo is number 4. And then you start getting into like really weird guys, like Brian Campbell is up there. Like, he is one of the worst in the field at gaining 2 or more strokes on approach in a round. But if he gains 3 or more, like, he spikes. Like, he's one of the few people. Like, if you take a look at it, he's gaining like 5 strokes on approach. Siwoo, Lowry, Brian Campbell, Nico, and Lucas Glover are like the only guys who can do it. Scheffler did it like once.
That's crazy. Yeah. I also was like afraid that Henrik Norlander was going to be the answer to one of those questions. So
It's only of guys in the field this week.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. It's really weird kind of how that works, right? Like, there are guys who just consistently do pretty well, but they don't spike a ton. And there are guys who, when they're on, they're really on. And I do think that part of that is probably the way that they, just approach the golf course, what their strategy is. How often are they attacking pins? How often are they making sure they're missing to the fat side of the green, that kind of thing. But I also think it's probably a little bit about swing mechanics, and, guys who are more dependent on timing in their swing. When they time it right, they're going to be locked in. And when they don't time it right, they're going to have a wide dispersion. Whereas other guys, their swing is less dependent on timing. They don't need to time it up, but that also means maybe they're perfectly synced a little bit less often.
So guys that fall into that category, just simply looking at the stats. I'm getting all of this from betspertsgolf.com in the floor ceiling type projections and stats. So you can go over to betspertsgolf.com, use the rabbit hole, figure all this out. You have the DFS optimizer in there as well. If you want to build some lineups, everyone who has Fantasy National has access to the rabbit hole. Keep that in mind. If you just log on to Fantasy National, you can sync the accounts and boom, you're on there. And listen, Goddard is on this list. Obviously, he's kind of playing on a different planet right now because it's the last year sample versus the last 4-week sample. Like Nick Taylor, Ricky Fowler, Denny McCarthy, Harris English, Sam Burns, Sam Stevens are all guys that when they spike really high, but most of the time they're well behind the field.
Yeah, and I think Cam Young might fit that as well. He's had stretches where his irons have been really good, and then most of the time that's one of the things that is holding him back from being one of the true elites. So yeah, it's just like a fun kind of thing to think through and recognize that there absolutely are guys who are going to spike more often than others.
It's funny you mentioned Cam Young. Cam Young gains 1 stroke on approach 20% of the time in a round, and that's behind Denny McCarthy. That's one of the lowest in the field.
Yeah, it hasn't been very good. That's for sure.
Like Marco Penge is actually someone I wanted to bring up. Obviously, like this course limits his biggest skill set, and he just seems off since coming over. Maybe it's a club change, maybe it's sickness, maybe it's a new country, maybe he ran a heater for 8 months last year and he's just not that good. Who knows? But he's still an elite driver of the golf ball, and he continues to be in these fields. Like, I just look through him at this point, and that is not what we were talking about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean the irons have been atrocious to start the year, and I think that's whenever you change clubs, to me, like that's the hardest thing to adjust to. The driver, you're probably going to be able to do no problem. Wedges, you're probably going to be able to do no problem. Irons are a bit of a tougher adjustment. The feel is different. The way it launches is different. The way it spins is a little bit different. So it's absolutely an adjustment. And remember when he was playing really well last year, like in the late summer and then in the fall, he was doing it with both aspects of driving or both aspects of ball striking, the irons and the driver. And now the driver's still there, but it's not just that like the irons aren't a source of gaining for him anymore. It's like they're actively just bad, really, really bad right now. So I'm definitely still in this camp of I want to see it from him first, and I'm certainly not going to try to get ahead of the curve on a course that doesn't fit him that well because, as you said, it does take away his biggest skill set.
So, of those guys that are gaining like a percentage of 1 stroke gained on approach per round, less often than Cam Young, Potgieter, Minwoo Lee, Harry Hall, Jason Day, and Penge are the only guys over the last year who gained fewer strokes than him. However, if you go to 2 and 3, all of a sudden Cameron Young is well above the field. So he's exactly the type of guy that we were talking about. When it's bad, it's bad. When it's good, it's really good.
That it's surprising that it's been that bad, but it makes sense. It really does.
Yeah, he's around Joe Highsmith. He's like behind Joe Highsmith and Johnny Vegas and Jacob Bridgman. Do you like Bridgman at all this week? Because I kind of like Bridgman.
Let me see where we have Bridgman.
Playing very steady golf, excellent putter. And listen,
Yeah.
if we're going to do this PGA National thing, he was second there last year.
his his strokes game profile is like exactly what we're looking for at this course. Now, it's not exactly what we're looking for because like we want better players than him, but in terms of somebody who's going to project better at Pebble Beach than he would last week at Scottsdale or the week before at Torrey Pines, his skill set is that. He's not long off the tee. He's inaccurate off the tee. He's not a great iron player. All of this, by the way, of course, is kind of relative to the rest of this field. Like you put him in, a weak field, and his ball striking isn't bad at all. So, but gains quite a bit with the putter and has a decent short game. So, yeah, if you're going to play Bridgman in a signature event, this is probably the best one to do so.
Yeah, he is $6,900 on DraftKings, which is ahead of someone like Brian Harmon, who's 62, or Alex Smalley, who's 66. Hell, the winner at PGA National last year, Joe Highsmith, is the min at $6,000. Actually, before we get to Scottie, the putting stats that you said in the course fit model that you use are just taking overall strokes game putting. But I wanted to throw to you that these greens are way different than most greens.
Yeah, this is like one of my favorite types of conversations when we talk about just how to analyze golf in general. So the course fit model is really cool because one of the things it can do is actually just like directly answer this question for us. If putting on these greens or a totally different skill set. Now, like it absolutely is different. These greens are different. You have to read the greens a little bit differently. But most of like putting skill is how good is your speed? How is your ability to read greens? How committed can you be to whatever your read is? And then how well can you execute the putt? And so getting back to like the main part of the answer is if what you're hypothesizing was correct, if we couldn't take regular putting and apply it to Pebble Beach, then there's no way we'd see a predictive boost to putting here because putting is using numbers from all tournaments and from all greens. And so the fact that we have I believe it's a 22% boost in putting predictive value here at Pebble Beach, that means that all putting skill does translate here, even though the greens are as different as they are.
Maybe it's because we only see, and we have limited sample from Pebble Beach over the years, and this wasn't the strongest field event. But you're going to be more right about this than I am because you've actually looked at it. It's my sense that when I think about this, that Overall putting, yes, you're right. But there are guys who just can't putt on these greens, and then there are guys that can putt on these greens. And it really has nothing to do whether they're good at putting or not. For the if you're looking at the bell curve, the 15 bottom percent and the 15 top percent could be anyone. They just are familiar and comfortable putting here.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that. I also think this is like one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. Like think of Brooks in his interviews at Torrey a couple weeks ago, where he was putting horribly that week, and he kept saying, "Well, yeah, I can't putt on Poe. I can't putt on Poe," and that might be true. But if he goes back there next year and he makes a bunch of putts on day one, you think day two he's thinking, "I can't putt on Poe," or is he thinking, "All right, I've got it figured out now"? Sometimes it's just, we tell ourselves the stories that make us feel better about the performance we just had, and it makes you feel a lot better to think, I just can't putt on these greens. And by the way, like, the fact that he then changed putters tells us he didn't really truly believe that. Because if he truly believed that his only issue is that he can't putt on Poe, he has no reason to change putters. The fact that he changed putters tells me that he knew, okay, there is an underlying issue. Something's wrong with my stroke. Something's wrong with my alignment that I need to address and fix moving forward. And it's not just about the surface of the green. So that same sort of thing I think happens at Pebble. We kind of have this like confirmation bias. When someone who hasn't putted well in the past doesn't putt well here, we say, oh, he just can't figure out these greens. And when someone who hasn't putted well in the past does putt well here at Pebble, we don't say, oh, I guess that's not really a thing. We say, oh, he must have figured it out. He learned how to do it. And so I think it's one of those things where, like, there's just a lot of confirmation bias to kind of be worried about. And more often than not, I think if you fade that sort of thing, you're going to be better off.
There's three courses that really have this type of Poe. It's going to be Riviera, Torrey Pines South, and then Pebble Beach and Spyglass. But if we're just talking about Pebble Beach, Riv, and Torrey Pines South, we're talking about the most missed putts inside 5 feet. From 5 to 10 feet, it's only 50% putting, which is like the second lowest on tour. Inside 10 feet is like way down. It's the amount of short putts that are missed. That when things, because it's the inconsistency in these greens. Like Michael Kim came on and talked about what is different on this show between these types of greens and what you see in the rest of the country. And he even kind of said, it's not so much that you read them or you don't read them. It's if you miss one because it hits a bump halfway down and that's why you miss, are you then rattled standing over the next one? And I would guess that you being a high level player, like, you can see how that could filter in, where maybe guys with a bit more experience, or maybe it's just the mentality that you would have, that if you're the type to get rattled, that would rattle you, and it might just go in the tank from there.
Yeah, that I think is a really good way to put it. And when you think of it that way, you also recognize that, you know what, the fact that, like, fewer putts are made from that distance here than usual, that can just, you know, it can affect everybody in a similar way. And one of the things it does is it means that on short putts, the margin for error is a little bit less, right? So if ordinarily you hit a putt that would have snuck in that bottom edge, here it takes a little bit of a bump and gets knocked out. And so you want the putt to be dead center so that if it takes a little bit of a bump, it's still going in the hole. And that could actually help explain why putting is more predictive than usual here, a little bit, because you have to be a little bit finer on the margins around the hole.
So you're convinced Denny McCarthy is winning this week?
Very much not the case. So that's kind of like part two of my course fit analysis this week, which is I really don't like who it's pointing to, because it's pointing to guys like McCarthy, like Harry Hall. And my intuition is that you can't win a golf tournament. You can't contend on putting alone. That can help you make the cut. It can give you a nice floor, but it can't help you win. And even though putting's more predictive, it's still super, super volatile. So I want more than that. And so I actually, I did a level of analysis that I haven't done before. I tried to predict, top 10 finishes, and there I did find more approach signal and around the green signal. So that was kind of cool this week. And it means I have a reason to not just load up on Denny and Harry Hall, but yeah, it is going to point me to putting a lot more than usual. I'm going to have to stomach that at least a little bit.
One guy that I was considering, and Jeff and I talked it out on the betting show, was Ryan Gerard, who historically, really terrible putter, but has been putting amazingly so far this season. How do you approach that? Obviously you want to look at the long-term sample of what's this guy's baseline, but it does feel like guys can improve doing things, or they could just run through hot stretches. I kind of gave Emiliano Grillo as an example of this, a guy that we mocked for 8 years. Hey, you can use Grillo, but he's going to miss every 2-foot putt. but over the past 18 months, he's been really good on the greens and no one has really noticed. Has Gerard just gotten better? And when do we know that's the case?
Yeah, man, I love this is another conversation that I just love to kind of have. So, what we have found in our data is that putting doesn't stabilize until around 44 rounds worth of data. Like that's a huge number, right? And he's got what 12 so far this year. But I also think that we can say if you're going to have a 3 event sample that matters, it's probably after a long layoff where a guy had the opportunity to really address his weakness. So he had the long layoff, right? And now we're seeing the 3 events at the actual start of the season. So at the very least, like it's more likely that he actually did really improve with the putter because it's the first 3 events than if he randomly had this stretch of 3 straight events gaining like in the middle of May after putting poorly all of April. So it does mean a little bit more than usual, and it is something that we should look out for. I also like the fact that he was just on I don't know what show it was, but he was talking about what his kitchen looks like. He doesn't have a dining table. He just has a bunch of different like putting mats and flat screens on the wall. It was really cool. He's got like a Corn Ferry guy living in his basement and another like pro living in the upstairs of his house or whatever. So really cool little segment there. And he's obviously been working on it. He's been putting in the time with the putter. So yeah, there's definitely a chance that he's a better putter now.
If that's the case, then
I,
he's a great play this week.
yeah, and I think at this point, what I would say is it's pretty likely that putting is not the liability for him that it was last year, or that it continues to be for a Rico Hoey type. It's still really unlikely that it's a strength for him in the way that like Cameron Young was able to turn putting into a strength all of last season. If we're making bets right now on does Gerard finish the season as one of the better putters or even like a top 40% putter, we should still pretty heavily take the no on that side, but it's meaningful at the very least.
But let's say he's the 39th percentile. Like he doesn't need to be in the top 8 or 8%, 10%, 20%. If you just say like he's not only slightly above average, just a little bit better than that, I feel like that's the kind of gamble that you want to make on a lot of these guys because everything he does well is exactly what wins golf tournaments. That if he could just bring that strength of putting along, it's basically when Scottie went from being the world's worst putter to like kind of okay, and then he won every week.
Yeah, and this is also an interesting week to kind of make that bet on him because the other area in which that he's like very clearly behind the best player in the world is driving. And he's not losing as much to those guys this week with his driver, but he is a very good iron player. He's got a good short game. And so when we're looking at upside on this course, remember those 2 skills do translate into upside on this golf course. So this probably is a pretty decent place to take that kind of chance on him. It's just if it doesn't work out, if he's missing a bunch of 4-footers early, you're going to say, oh my God, why did I play Ryan Gerard on a course where putting is this predictive? So it could go either way for you very quickly.
These are the guys that I bet on and play every week. And listen, once every 6 weeks, it works out on DraftKings.
and that's all you need, right? You just need the one hit every now and then, and it pays for your next couple months.
It's winter and it's cold, at least where I'm at. And I'm spending way more time indoors, aka I'm sleeping more. If you're like me, it's time to upgrade your sleep and switch to Helix. You'll never go back. I took the Helix sleep quiz. It matched me to the right mattress for how I actually sleep, not how some showroom goober thinks I sleep. And since it's been all restful nights, no tossing, no back pain, and my sleep tracking actually backs that up. My deep sleep numbers off the charts, good, way better than before. We've got more than just one Helix in our house now, too. Just threw one in the upcoming baby's room so I can get back to sleep quickly the moment that the baby goes down. Helix builds mattresses for different people, not a one-size-fits-all nonsense, because that wouldn't make any sense. There's free shipping in the United States and a 120-night sleep trial with a limited lifetime warranty. Go to helixsleep.com/mayo for 27% off, site-wide exclusive for listeners of the Pat Mayo Experience. That's helixsleep.com/mayo. Do it now! Using a VPN is like wearing pants online. All your activity is encrypted and private, hidden from trackers, snoopers, and data brokers. That is why you need Surfshark. Surfshark can help you avoid dynamic pricing by connecting to cheaper locations to save money on everything from flight tickets to hotel bookings. You can change your virtual location to safely stream content from home or unlock regional shows and movies that might be restricted in your current country. With Surfshark, fast connection speeds are guaranteed across their extensive network of servers in 100 plus countries. And the Clean Web ad blocker is an efficient feature that blocks annoying ad trackers and malware before they even load, resulting in a faster, cleaner, and safer browsing experience. Secure your privacy with Surfshark. It's completely risk-free with their 30-day money-back guarantee. Right now, go to surfshark.deal/PatMayo and use my code, PatMayo, for 4 extra months at checkout. That link and code are in the show notes and description. What was the Scottie Scheffler information that you found?
So I looked at overall just like performance of lineups. And let me preface this by saying, obviously, this data is from just one event. And so every single event is going to look slightly different. But I will say, in terms of what the cheap players that you needed in order to fit Scottie did last week, like their performance was about as good as you could ask for, especially relative to more balanced lineups and the guys you would have landed on otherwise. And one of the ways we can look at that is we can say, or one of the ways we can see that is Scottie lineups averaged 4.9 cuts made last week. All this data, by the way, is from the $55 with like 1,500 or so people. Usually I do this kind of analysis with the single entries that I play, but I wanted a larger field just so we had different combinations with Scottie. And so the data was a little bit more telling about how the entire field did and not just, the few lineups that were used in the $177 or 177 person $200 single entry or something like that. So 4.9 cuts made on average in Scottie lineups, 3.6 without. So think about what that's saying. That's more than just Scottie making the cut. 1.3 more cuts made per lineup with Scottie than without. That means the really cheap guys actually made cuts at a higher rate than like the 8,000 guys that were used with Scottie. So that essentially tells us, okay, this week was about as good as it could be for Scottie lineups. And yet, when you then look at what happens with the upside, and this is like I think the case that you and I have made the last few times we've been on the show together, and both of them were Scottie events, as we said, the problem with Scottie lineups is the upside of the other guys that you have to use just doesn't match the upside that you can get with everybody else. So here's some interesting data. 31.7% of Scottie lineups had at least 3 players in the top 20, Scottie included. 35.8% of lineups without had at least 3 in the top 20. So small advantage there, not a huge advantage. 4.5% of lineups with Scottie had at least 4 guys in the top 20. 14.8% did so without. So now we're at over 3 times as many non-Scottie lineups had 4 guys in the top 20. And then when you go to 5 guys in the top 20, it's 6 times more likely, 6.3 times more likely to have 5 guys in the top 20 without Scottie than with. You see the same thing in top 10s as well. So 13.2% without versus 8% with Scottie had at least 3 in the top 10, and then 0 lineups in the $55 had 4 guys in the top 10 with Scottie Scheffler. 2.2% did so without Scottie. So the trade-off is really, really clear. When you're using Scottie, you're missing out on a lot of these like upside scenarios where you just have a bunch of guys in contention, all getting bonus points, all racking up fantasy points. I think it's a really just like big uphill battle to build Scottie lineups right now with pricing. We do have to then talk about the difference now that we're in a signature event. There's no cut, but just from like the standard framework of what we've been working with so far this year, I think the answer is pretty clear that the path to a takedown has a lot less resistance if you're not using Scottie right now.
And that doesn't mean the one thing that people get confused when we talk about these things is, are we telling you to not play Scottie Scheffler? Clearly not. People are betting in the without Scottie market still, that if Scheffler wins, especially like when you start going more macro than the $55, you go into the $25 or the $5 where you have 100,000 entries. If Scheffler wins, you're going to need him.
Yeah, I think at least right now in the small single entries, there absolutely are outcomes where Scottie wins and you don't need him.
Correct. But in the big ones, someone is
Yes.
going to have that combination.
Yes. And so when we look at this exact data, like just think about that like last data point that I shared. 0% in the $55 had at least 4 in the top 10 with Scottie. Part of that is look who was in the top 10. Like I don't even think mathematically you could have had 4 in the top 10 with Scottie just based on who was in there and the pricing. But you are going to have weeks where, there are like 2 or 3 super, super cheap guys who get into the top 10. They're all like 1% owned. And so if you use Scotty in the $55 and the $200 single entry, the chance that you have that combination of really cheap guys is extremely low. And so like the math there says, well, don't chase that extremely low outcome because you don't need that unlikely of an outcome to win the $200 single entry or the $55. But to win when you're playing against 100,000 other people in the $25 MME, now you do need a super unlikely scenario. So now it actually is worth potentially chasing the outcome. So yeah, the dynamics of the contest are going to absolutely matter, and we're going to see different outcomes with different events. And I think an obvious segue there is how does the signature event change things for you? I know how it changes things for me, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well.
First of all, it would still depend on the pricing of who is available at the bottom. I think I'd be more willing to take a few Scotty shots this week just to, it would all depend on how many lineups I'm playing. If I was only playing 10 lineups, I probably wouldn't use them at all and hope that we don't see. And this becomes very difficult, especially when you mentioned the course fit rankings, that you're going to have these guys from the bottom, like a Harry Hall, or the less overall skilled players that we might think of on a consistent basis, have more of a chance to spike at this event, even with the elevated field, even though they're so far behind in skills, that you could be a great putter and a great wedge player, and that can kind of carry you, or at other courses that if you simply don't drive the ball well and you don't make every 60-foot putt like Hideki Matsuyama, that you would not be in that tournament whatsoever, where this week you could get away with that. That I think it kind of lends it both ways. I'm curious to know what you think, that if you really need to kind of bet on, like, hey, does Scotty really have, like, what are the odds right now? Like, does Scotty really have 4 times the win equity of Rory at this course? Maybe. That seems high to me, though.
Yeah, we don't show that. We have Scotty at 13.8% this week, Rory at 5.6%. So actually a little bit less than 3 times the win equity of Rory. But I agree with everything you said there, and I'll add that like the quality of those cheap guys that you have to use to fit Scotty this week, it's just much better, right? So if you use Scotty, you're left with $7,200 per the remaining 5 spots in your lineup. Keith Mitchell, Wyndham Clark, Alex Noren, Corey Connors, like those guys actually do have upside this week. If any of those guys contend, we're not going to be surprised in the way that last week we would have been surprised if Michael Brennan contended. Like I think Akshay Bhatia was the only guy down there who actually, gave you any type of real upside. So this week, there are paths to upside for the guys that you have to use with Scotty. That does make Scotty lineups a lot more intriguing. The downside is I think that's also going to make him 30% owned instead of the 20% we saw last week in singles.
And if it goes a little bit chalky and the overall top performers end up doing well, that you get a leaderboard, even if Scotty comes in, even if Scotty wins this week, but the rest of the leaderboard it's Henley, Siwoo, Cantlay, Fitzpatrick, Jason Day, just guys that you're not going to have in a lineup with Scotty based on how it works, then it becomes a bit more problematic. But if we're thinking about a Scotty lineup, and thinking about it from this range, I went with Noren, Rye, and Bridgman as the next 3 guys in. I'm back up to $7,400. Do you think the move would be to keep it at this level, or do you then try to really go for one of these punts and then try to get another one of those higher win equity guys? Like, are there two guys? Are there 2 guys sub $6,500 you like enough to boost you back up that then you could have 2 more? I bet on Noren and Rye to win, like I mentioned. Are they going to win? I played it more for the 8 places than I did for the win. Maybe they run a hot putter. They're the type of guys that I like at this tournament. But if we just lose Rye from this lineup and be like, yo, we're playing for birdies here. We're playing DraftKings scoring. I'm taking Nico and I'm taking Chris Kirk. 2 guys who can play well at this course. What they do well scores at this course. And now all of a sudden I have $9,600 left and I can be like, yo, I can pair up Justin Rose with Scheffler kind of thing.
I don't think I would do this, but I like the idea of paying down once for those guys so that you get access to the 8Ks again. So like a Cam Young at 8,100 or Oberg at 83, something like that. Fitzpatrick at 87,
Rye.
I think that's a really good option because there's like a very clear, I think, mispricing of some of these 8,000 guys where they deserve to be 9,000s, and DraftKings just said, no, we want like a consistent, dropping of the price throughout instead of a bunch of guys in the 9,000s and then skipping, only having, eight guys overall in the 8,000s or something like that. So I do think we should try to get access to that $8,000 range in some way, and going one time from like a Kitayama type to Echeverria, I think that's worth getting access to that range.
Of these guys down here, I identified two. It was Kirk and who the hell was the other guy? Kirk and Nico. Grillo would probably be the next highest rated guy for me. I like Glover a lot. He hasn't played yet this year somehow.
Yeah, I think Valimaki is also on that list for me, but I'm with you that Kirk is probably number one, and Grillo's up there as well. And then I think you could probably get away with going up to Michael Kim or Patrick Rogers as well.
Can we just do this? Can we just go with Michael Kim? I like Michael Kim obviously a lot this week, but then we're in that middle $8,000 range, and you could go, let's go like Bobby Mack and who's 88. I guess it depends on where you want to get to. If I could get to Henley, if I get to Henley and then I'm at 78, then you're at the Spawn. How do you feel about this range? Lowry, Spawn, Morikawa, English, Straka. I bet Straka. He was cruising in this tournament last year, and just the wheels fell off halfway through the third round.
You're probably not going to be surprised to hear me say I'm interested in Spawn, although I really wish that we had like some context about why he withdrew last week, because I don't want to play him if he's like actually injured. But if that was just like a really, conservative, careful decision, and it was less about an actual injury and more that, oh, I just felt like I wanted to work on my game for a week, then I'd be in on Spawn. So I wish I had more information there, but I think this whole range is kind of loaded. Straka, Cootie, Fowler, Keegan, Harry Hall, as we mentioned, Pendrith. Like there are a lot of strong players in this range, and I think we can play most of them.
I'm putting you on the clock right now. I joined an Underdog Draft. We have the fourth pick. The first two picks off the board were Scottie and Rory. We're on the clock. Fleetwood goes next. Who would be your fourth highest rated guy here? Because for me, it's Henley.
Yeah, it's Henley for me as well. I wish we had Tommy there, but we got to go Henley.
Oh, we're going to have a Tommy conversation as a part of this show. I really like doing these. Obviously, one draft samples aren't going to tell you much, but it does objectively, I think, give you a good idea of where people are at. Goddard goes with the fifth pick in this draft. If you ever want to get in on these drafts, code Mayo at Underdog. Sign up, get your deposit bonus. There's also a Pat Mayo Classic that's completely rake-free. 6 people, you draft 6 guys, and then boom, you're off. So Rose goes after Goddard, then Siwoo goes. The next highest drafted guys left on the board: Victor, Xander, Thorbjornsen, Hideki, and then Patrick Cantlay. I am very curious to see the temperature on Xander Schauffele this week, who just looks, I don't want to say lost. He had a very good Sunday. Like, someone went Thorbjornsen over Victor, Xander, Hideki, and Cantlay here. Do we just go Victor?
I think we go Hideki.
Really?
Yeah. He's just he's on a different tier than those guys in terms of his current quality of play. So that's why. But
can you get that putting week out of Hideki again, would be my question. Because if he doesn't have that putting week, he looks really bad last week.
he does, but the iron play and the around the green play is still solid, and his weakness compared to the other elites is off the tee. And like that's what we saw, right? Like, he had the hot putter, but he also was putting himself in just terrible spot after terrible spot off the tee. And he's probably not going to get hurt by the driver as much at Pebble Beach as he is at Scottsdale, where driving is so incredibly predictive.
So around Hideki, Thorbjornsen goes before, Cantlay goes after. I don't really have a read on either of those two guys this week. Like, you're taking away Thorbjornsen's best weapon at this course.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have taken Thorbjornsen there. But I think right now, like, if we get Fitzpatrick, that'd be the best outcome for sure.
So we're up in 4 picks. Xander and Victor go after. Cootie, Fitzpatrick, Knapp, and McNeely are ADP-wise the next 4 going off the board. So if it's not Fitzpatrick, where would you like to go? Weirdly, I know how great Jake Knapp has been driving the ball, but his irons and putting have been shockingly pretty good.
Yeah, his putting has been really good at times in the past, but right now it looks like it's a very real strength of his. So I don't mind a Knapp pick at all here. And The other thing with Knapp is like he scores really, really well, and you don't have to worry about a missed cut here. So I would have no issue taking Knapp if we don't get Fitzpatrick.
Day and Ludwig go. Day's course history. What did you find in terms of course history ranking for Pebble Beach? Like we see a lot of the same guys play really well at that course. Is that because of the field strength for years where it'd be good guys and then like kind of crappy guys and all the good guys would just filter up towards the top? Is it a familiarity with the place? It used to be the slow rounds. That used to be what I used to attribute Jason Day to. Like, oh, it's 7 hour round. That's tailor made for Jason Day.
Yeah, I really don't do a ton of course history like analysis, and I that's not entirely true because my course fit model, like what it's doing is literally looking at course history for every player, and it's not. It's so like if let's use Fitzpatrick for example. It's not looking at what he has done overall and then creating like one strokes gain profile for him and deciding how well he fits the course and then relating that to his skill set. It's creating a strokes gain profile for him every single time that he has played at Pebble Beach based on his lead in form and all that stuff. Then looking at how he's played and doing that for every single player. And then that's how we're learning what skill sets translate to success. So I don't feel the need to kind of do any course fit analysis on top of that. The fact that we're getting Fitzpatrick and Knapp right here seems pretty great.
Do you want Knapp or Cam Young?
I think Knapp.
All right, we'll take Jake Knapp because Cam Young's still sitting there. Burns is still sitting there. I'm actually kind of shocked Berger didn't go higher. When the first run of people's bets that I saw for the week, I actually wrote him up on Sunday night as well. I didn't think his odds were going to be 50-1. I think a few people got him at 70, but those numbers are long gone. I don't know if I really want to bet Daniel Berger 50-1 in this field.
Yeah, I just don't really have any interest in him against this type of field because we've talked a bunch in the past few weeks about like just overall volatility and how you want high volatile players when they're up against really good competition. He's a low volatility guy, so I don't want to use a low volatility guy when they have to beat this many elite players.
So Lowry goes a little bit later. We still have Ben Griffin, Cam Young on the board. Do you think that'll be reflective in their DraftKings ownership that people are just looking through Ben Griffin and after 2 weeks of me betting Cameron Young, even I said on the show, like even though his number's way bigger now, I'm just kind of done with betting him for the moment.
I do think we'll see Ben Griffin a little bit lower owned. I think we're going to see pretty big ownership on Cam Young, and part of that is just like the psychological effect of seeing Cameron Young at $8,100 after all this time. So I definitely think that he will be pretty popular, but there's absolutely like a very clear signal between where guys are going in these underdog drafts and what their eventual ownership has been. So I as someone who's doing ownership projections every single week, I can very much vouch for the fact that doing these drafts has improved my ownership accuracy.
So like Morikawa goes ahead of Cam Young. Ben Griffin just goes after. Spieth is going at. What's going on with Spieth? For the guy who said he was going to play every week, he doesn't seem to play at all.
And when he plays, he's like the exact same guy. I thought maybe he'd have his game tightened up a little bit this year compared to last year. He's like the exact same player that he's been. So I don't have super high hopes for him the rest of the year.
So Harry Hall goes, Ricky Fowler goes, Berger goes. That leaves us for our last pick: Burns, English, Sahith, Minwoo, Noren, Bradley, Taylor, Bridgman, all the kind of guys that we talked about. I like Noren the best here. I would like to gamble on his profile at a course like this.
Yep, I agree. I will say, like, I think there's a strategy argument for scrolling down and taking somebody that's going to be in very few lineups, but uh, in terms of just like the quality of player left on the board, I think he's probably the best.
All right, so we'll take Noren, we'll put him in that spot, and we'll jump back over to DraftKings and start looking at these lineups again. So the last one that we built was Scheffler, Kirk, Griot, Michael Kim, Henley, and Straka. Do you think that is too aggressive for the Scottie lineup?
No, I don't. I think it's kind of what you have to do with the Scotty lineup. Like you've got to be chasing serious upside, and I do think there's like an argument to be made that you're not getting enough, probability of contention from Kirk, Grillo, Kim, but to fit Henley and Straka in the Scotty lineup, I think is really strong. And I think like more than anything else, this exercise, building this type of lineup, just shows again why you and I seem to be in agreement once again that the non-Scotty lineups are going to be better.
So let's build the non-Scotty lineups. What is the best possible non-Scotty? You know, I'm going to enter that Scotty lineup. You know, I just can't sit here and not enter it. So we'll go in with, we'll cross out Scheffler and then figure out where we want to start. It sounds like you and I are both on the same page that starting with Tommy might prove to be a very high upside play, and it's probably the low ownership play too.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen him yet this year, at least on the PGA Tour, but he's very clearly the second best player in our projections over at FTN Fantasy. Pretty clearly ahead of even the third best, by the way. So still way behind Scotty, obviously, but I think he's probably the most underpriced in this range. I will say though, Pat, if we want to start just like in a really good comparison to Scotty lineups, if you use Scotty, you're left with $7,200. If you use the trio of Hideki, Siwoo Kim, and Chris Gotterup, three guys who have played really good golf this year, you're left with $7,200 per the remaining spot. So that can lead to like just a really good comparison of what Scotty lineups look like compared to what non-Scotty lineups look like.
So in that scenario, you are like Scotty, Ride, Norin versus Hideki, Siwoo, Gotterup.
Something like that, yeah.
So but if we start with Tommy, we have around $8,000 left. We can kind of just pick off all the guys that we like in your initial run of ownership, or at least your lean. What are you seeing from the $9,000 range? Like, are people going to Rose? Because I feel like they should go to Rose.
I don't think people are going to go to Rose. I think they're going to go. I think we're going to kind of see like collections of different types of DFS players where some are just going to say, well, I've already watched like these guys play well every single week this year. Why would I not use Siwoo and Hideki yet again? Why would I not use Goddard again? And then you're going to see guys who just take like a little bit of a wider view and say, okay, well, who are the best players in this range based on their play over the last 2 years and who are the most underpriced in that regard? And so then we'll see some Tommy, then we'll see some Victor. We'll see, Henley at 9,200 get some love. We'll see Xander at 9,100 get some love. But kind of both groups, I think, are going to skip over Justin Rose a little bit. So I wouldn't have any opposition to going Justin Rose myself.
So we can go that way, and then we're left with $7,600, and we can get our way back up into the eights. Of these bottom eights, be it Ludwig, Bobby, Burns, Day is here in the mids, which one do you like the best? Do you think that projects out well?
Ben Griffin definitely projects the best for us. One thing I've noticed so far this year is he has a pretty bad left miss off the tee that he's struggling with, and that led to a couple bad right misses. So I'm a little bit worried about his driver, but as we've talked about, that's less of a concern here at Pebble than it was last week. So Ben Griffin is definitely someone of interest to me. I think Fitzpatrick projects extremely, extremely well. I do expect him to be chalky, but probably good chalk. And then, yeah, I mean, this low eights and upper sevens range, I think, is really, really loaded. So you can kind of go to basically anybody that you want.
Yeah, we can scroll down a little bit. I will say that the big left miss at Pebble could be in the ocean.
Yes, it could. It could be in the ocean. At least it's not in the ocean on 9 and 10, though.
That's true.
It's also not in the ocean on 6.
Do you have any sort of stance on Morikawa?
Yeah, I don't want to play him.
All right, so we'll go Lowry Straka instead. Because I told you, I want to build kind of this like Euro lineup to see how it goes. This would normally be filled out with Rye and Norin. I think I like Norin a little bit better because of the putting predictability, like what you said. And then you're into like, I mean, Harris English isn't Euro, but he might as well be.
Yeah. Yeah, when we picked Rose, like I wasn't even remembering that, but yeah, we kind of landed on that perfectly. Yeah, there isn't a good option here, is there?
No, you're like I. It's not that I don't like Cootie this week. I just think this might be too much of a step up in class.
Yes,
I mean I love Akshay. We could use Akshay. Loves the wind.
Could use Akshay. I think your initial call was right that Harris English is basically a European the way he plays golf. So.
Has he ever done anything at Pebble Beach in his life? It just seems like a course where he would have, and it feels like he should have a ton of reps here. He might just not ever play it, because that was always the case with a lot of these guys, that they'd either play Torrey Pines or they'd play Pebble. There was very few that used to double up before this became a signature event. Yeah, he's played it 3 times in his career, and that includes the U.S. Open in 2019. He's never finished better than T58. It's crazy to think about, but he's a better player now.
He's a better player now, and he fits the course. So I don't really care what his history looks like. Yeah, and and he fits, he fits this kind of build. So if this is another one of those cases where you can kind of like luck into correlation. If you don't end up getting any correlation because there's no translation between Euro type player and success here, it's not going to hurt you. These guys are all still good and they can still help you. If you do get a little bit more blustery conditions than are expected, and if you do really see an effect of, hey, these guys do play better in cold conditions, like we also saw Harris English win Torrey last year when it was cold and windy and rainy. So we already know that he can really succeed in that kind of condition.
I mean, you could just take Canadians too. Unfortunately, none of the Canadians are really playing well at all to start the season. Like AJ Irwat is like the best one now, or Ewart, whoever that guy is, the guy who won Q School.
Yeah. Going back to Cootie for a moment, I meant to bring this up. Like, I think less than the bump in class, I'm just more worried about the fact that he dominates off the tee. The rest of his game is not quite the caliber of the other guys in this price range. And we're going from a course where like that was the thing that drove success, no pun intended. And now we're at a course where driving doesn't drive success at all. So I won't be on Cootie this week.
Trying to think of I'm going to search on the rabbit hole. I'm just going to go last 2 months. So just everything that's happened so far this year. Average strokes gained approach per round. I'm just curious. Siwoo, Rose, Henley, Day, Hideki, Victor. Connors is still up there. He just cannot. I mean, his chipping and putting somehow got worse, which I didn't think was possible.
Yeah, and we're also just not like seeing the typical ball striking from him. He lost strokes with his irons last week. When was the last time we saw that from Corey?
Very rarely, but maybe that's a nice buying opportunity. That, hey, on paper, like in your mind, yes, I mean his elite sort of like he's elite off the tee in the fact that he hits it slightly above average. He's very accurate, but you get a wedge in his hand, usually he's quite good.
He sure is. Can he make enough putts here?
No, he can't.
Yeah,
But
so
can Siwoo?
also a good question. I think, in fact, I think that's a really good point. I think I'm probably off Siwoo here for that same reason. Like he has separated so far from the field so far this season with his ball striking, and it's so much harder to do that at Pebble Beach. You have to actually make putts to separate, and yeah, same thing. Like I don't think he's going to be able to do that.
So other guys that would rate out well in approach and putting so far this year. So I put in the three best ones for approach: Rose, Henley, and Day. Henley hasn't been like putting as well as you would expect him to be putting, but it's fine. This is where we're going to try to buy low on Henley with his like amazing approach play right now. Same as Seb Straka. Like Seb Straka keeps missing cut. He made the cut this week, but again, just horrendous putting, fantastic iron play. JT Poston's another one that he can't chip or can't putt right now. That's not usual for JT Poston.
No, it is not. And I don't. I guess. I mean, Straka lost 0.7 strokes per round at the Phoenix with his putter, but he was fine at the Amex, and that's all we've got from him this season. So I think this is a spot where I would absolutely take a chance on Straka because he fits this kind of grouping of players where you're just hoping they get hot with the irons and the putter collectively. Straka's every bit that guy.
So does Lowry fit into this as well? We know that he kind of sucks at putting, but he's a really good spike putter that when he putts well, it goes really well. And he tends overall to putt better on slower greens, which these are.
Yeah, I think he does. And to your point, like he does not fit the mold of, hey, who are guys who are both really good with their irons and really good with their putter, but he does fit who can be really good with the putter for a given week. And we've seen him get hot with both the putter and the irons at the same time quite a bit.
And then that drops us down for one more player in the $7,300 range. And then you have, I mean, Akshay is probably the king of this. I mean, he irons and putting. Those are the two things that he does well. Poston, who we just mentioned, is right here. Rye doesn't quite putt enough, but the irons are very consistent. Bridgman, Noren. I keep going to Noren in this spot. But is there anyone else from down here that you think that we should give the extra consideration to?
I think Noren is once again the best guy. Not just in the fact that like he projects the best for us, but also like this is kind of his skill set. He's not quite the iron player that everybody else in this category is. So let me see.
But Akshay is.
Yeah, Akshay isn't the putter that the other guys are, but he is the iron player.
Another player like Lowry, like when you go and take a look at his either depends on the POA. Like the POA at Riv is super fast. This being on the coast is super slow. Like same as Kitayama. Like Kitayama, a good coastal course player. So is Bhatia. They putt well on Paspalum. They played well in the Caribbean. Overseas, Kitayama, I think all 3 of his DP wins came at coastal courses that you just simply can't run those greens as fast as you normally would because the wind just might start pushing them off and then it's all over. Like you're going to have wind effects on that. That's something that I would start thinking about when trying to get a few tiebreakers here that I think that Akshay and Kitayama could putt above their baseline here.
Yes, great call. Another thing that we could do is we could go up to Ricky Fowler, who fits this mold very well. Very good iron player, very good putter.
You love Ricky.
And we could come down from Day to like a Bobby Mack or Burns or Berger or Knapp, something like that.
All right, so let's take a look at that. We'll enter this one, and then we'll take a look at the lineup that you just mentioned. And we take, who's it, Day down to McIntyre, and then we bump up Akshay to Fowler.
Yes.
Do you like that 2v2 trade? Is it because you don't like Day?
I'm not entirely sold on Bobby Mack. I definitely prefer Day to Bobby, I think. Let me double check that. They're actually really close in our projection. So I don't have an issue going down to Bobby Mack, and I definitely prefer Fowler to Akshay.
Do you prefer Fowler to Keegan Hall? I mean, I mentioned Gerard how I want to use him, and I just didn't throw him in any of these lineups because you could get to go up to Ludwig, who I doubt anyone's going to use this week.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if Oberk has a lot of ownership. I have no idea what to think of Keegan Bradley right now. I As you know, I'm like an anti-narrative guy, but I do think that there's a concern coming into the season of how much is Keegan carrying the Ryder Cup disappointment with him. And I kind of had the thought that I want to see him play well before I use him this year, and he missed the cut and then finished 43rd at the Farmers. And so I haven't seen it yet. If I do play him this week, I'll be going against that kind of instinct that I had about him. But he's also at a really low price tag compared to where we've been able to play him like over the last year and a half. And I think he'll be low owned and he's a high volatility player. So in a lot of ways, I think he's going to look like a great play this week.
I think that I would rather take the risk that Gerard makes some putts this week because I know where his game is at. And it'd be one thing if Keegan was losing 8 strokes putting through 2 events, and that's why he's not finishing high. He can't hit an approach shot, which is not what you want from Keegan. And that's not anything new from Keegan either. Like, he had a very good tour championship. He was okay at the BMW. He was god-awful at the Wyndham Championship. He was god-awful when I saw him in Memphis and hitting his approaches. Like, he's in the big negative 4 of his past 6 starts.
Yeah, we actually have him projected to lose 0.15 strokes per round with his irons against this field. So I think I'm with you on Gerard over Keegan. And man, Harry Hall's approach play is awful, but I think I'd even play him over Keegan right now.
See, I just can't play Harry Hall at this price. This seems crazy to me.
It's going to depend on ownership, of course. Like if he's 15% at this price, then yeah, there's no chance I'm playing him. But if he's 5% and all I need is a really good putting week from him to pay off that price tag, I think that's probably worth it.
Could you sell me on Xander as just like, oh yeah, no, he's fine. It's just he took a few weeks to warm up.
Let's see what did his numbers look like last week.
He had a very good round 4. So I bet you if he pops up that he had a pretty good week, it's because of his final round, which is probably a good thing that he figured something out.
Yeah, it was also a nice rally for him to actually make the cut.
Yeah, so round 4, he gained almost 5 strokes total. He was 2.4 on approach, 2.5 around the green, gained off the tee, gained putting as well. Gained 1.5, sorry. Putting 2.4 on approach. Like that's exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, and he wasn't gaining like it's not like he gained, so let's see, he gained 2.3 with his irons in the last round. It's not like he gained 2.5 on 2 shots and was just fine elsewhere. It was very consistent, just hitting good shot after good shot. So yeah, I liked what I saw.
Like if you wanted to take this lineup right now and you wanted to say like, hey, maybe Bobby Mack we'll take out Bobby Mack and go back to Dave for a second. So we need to save some money. It's like, oh, we need to save $200. You could take Henley to Xander You probably don't even have to. You could take Rose to Xander, and then you could take Rose to Henley. So you go Henley, Xander to start your lineup, or you could find a way up to Tommy, whatever it might be. But then you're flirting around with this style of lineup. Because I was thinking about taking that day spot to Ludwig to save some ownership. I feel like you could probably just do that with Xander instead, where you're gonna have to take a look at that range where Xander is $9,100. More people are going to use Henley above him. More people will probably still use Goddard and Cantlay below him. What do you have projection on McNeely? Because people just are lining up for McNeely right now.
Let's see. We haven't projected kind of in the same range as Cantlay and Rose for that matter, and Sam Burns, JJ Spawn. I don't think ownership wise he's going to be able to get a ton just because of who he's around. Like I think Fitz will get more than him. The hardest one I think ownership wise is Goddard because like are people going to say, oh my God, Goddard's going to win all the time now, or are people saying, all right, he's kind of blown his load for a lack of a better expression,
That's
and
a good expression.
there you go, and he's just not the guy to take anymore. So I do think that like we are going to probably see ownership pretty spread in this range in the upper eights and throughout the nines again this week. Where again, I'll give some credit to DraftKings here for the way that they've priced things. Where I don't think there are too many obvious answers in this range, other than Fitzpatrick. I think he's probably going to be very popular, but I think all like the other clear chalk is going to be all the way up at Scottie or way down in the lower eights. So yeah, I think it'll be pretty spread out.
If I had to guess, I would say Scheffler way above everyone else who's like up in this range. But the guys that you're looking at who will not be as owned above 9K, Tommy and Xander are probably the two most logical choices along with Rose.
I think Rose for sure. I'm not sure who else. I think Cantlay might be low owned.
Yeah, but then Jeff will be like, I'm not betting Cantlay, but here's the reasons why Cantlay is probably going to win. And then everyone else will think that way too.
Yeah. Thor Bjornsson might be low owned. And actually, I think Day, well, maybe because of his history. And we just saw him go pretty high in the underdog draft, so maybe not. Oberg, I think, will be fairly low. Burns might be pretty low. Berger could be low.
I don't think Berger will be. I think enough people like Berger, especially versus these other options, that maybe they do flip a coin between Burns and Berger, but people are in on Knapp, sure, but I think that Berger could be right around Knapp. People are out on Spawn and Morikawa and English and Straka for the moment. That just no one's going to that range, leaving Berger right there.
That's possible. I was thinking Cam Young and Jake Knapp being on both sides of him, like immediately just 100 apart was gonna just kind of make him slip through the cracks, but yeah, it could be a scenario where like a lot of people just use multiple of these guys. And so Berger does still get a fair amount. But again, like I don't think there are a ton of guys who are going to slip through the cracks. I think Rose is really like the only one above $9,000 that I'm pretty confident will be under 10%.
Let's build out one more lineup. Let's build out a single entry lineup for the week and see how that should look. And we don't need it to, I mean, you can just run projections and you can find out like whatever the best one is going to be. But if we're doing it off the top of our heads based on everything that we have just talked about, it's definitely a non-Scottie lineup, I'm guessing.
Yes. And it sounds like you and I both like the idea of starting with Tommy and basically saying like, we're going to get a similar, like just guy projected better than everybody else for his price that we would get with Scottie, but we're going to do so at almost $4,000 cheaper.
We are. The one issue with Tommy, I suppose, because we haven't seen Tommy, Rory, or Lowry play in America so far this year. Now, Rory and Lowry were fine. They were T4, T3, whatever it was, the Dubai Invitational. Tommy was kind of bad in his two starts, which I don't know if it worries me or not, but it seems very atypical for one of the more consistent guys.
Yeah, it's a bit of a concern, but at the same time, like, he's got his warm-up reps, and now the real season starts. So,
and it's going to make him, like, there's a chance in a no-cut event, being the third highest price player on the board, he's like 12% owned.
Yeah, great point. I mean, if he went out and won in Dubai, he's 25% at this price.
So you could go Fleetwood. The other start I would consider would be like Rose, Henley, Xander.
Yes, that's a really interesting one. Basically, it's like, again, I think like so many of these options up top are are great. And so when I'm building my single entry, I'm probably not picking amongst these players first.
It's
I'm
down.
probably picking my favorite $7,000 players first, and then seeing, okay, what do I have left up top? If I can fit Tommy, great. If I have to settle for Rose is my most expensive, I'm going to be fine with that.
So, would you go below $7,000 in a single entry this week? Is there anyone you like enough to be like, hey, I really like Michael Kim at $6,600. I really like Chris Kirk, whoever it might be. Would you jam them in and build out sort of a 5-1 type lineup? Or is it worth saying, like, hey, I like Alex Noren. I think he's a great play. He's 7,100. He's a perfect last guy in.
I don't have any like structural opposition to going cheaper, but I think just based on how many guys I like in the low sevens and mid sevens and upper sevens, I'm almost certainly not going to have a $6,000 player because we've already talked about Noren. Mitchell and Wyndham Clark are outstanding scorers in a no cut event, so they're really intriguing. Same goes for Kitayama and Thagala, and then then the low eights, like you get the same sort of thing. Oberg, Cam Young, Sam Burns are all great scores. Thor Bjornson's a great scorer. Ben Griffin projects really well. So there are too many guys that I like in that type of range for me to go down to 6,000 to somebody that I'm not going to have a ton of conviction on.
Okay, so let's keep Noren in there as our lowest price player. I mean, for whatever reason, you keep fading Akshay, which is crazy because if we want someone firing at some pins, it's Akshay. He's not going to
He
give a
did play
fuck.
really, really well last week.
Well, and you're either going to get the good version of him or the bad version of him. And
Yeah.
I like him at a spot where he can be aggressive. And he's a very good wind player if the wind does pick up. I don't know how that's possible because it looks like he may blow away, but that doesn't seem to be an issue.
Yeah. Never accounted for that. Strokes gained gets blown away. Or strokes gained gets knocked off balance. But yeah, I, in fact, you know what? I should have included Akshay because he's right there with Kitayama and Thagala in terms of his birdie rate over expectation. So I like that call. And
So,
yeah, again,
so
there's so many guys in this range that are good.
yeah, if we can go Noren Akshay, though, we can get ourselves back up to that like high eights, low nines, I feel like, because we can throw in. Is Straka your favorite of these high $7,000 guys? Is it Fowler? Is it Spawn, Lowry? Which one would it be?
I think it's probably Straka, and that would change if one of these guys is lower owned than I expect. I had Fowler in round four showdown at like 3%. He did really well, and he was kind of he was one of the guys I was looking for because of his iron play and putting. Like that's what I felt like we needed for a spike from somebody who wasn't in contention, and now that's what we're looking for largely this week. So I definitely like Fowler a lot again. And I do think there's a chance that he's going to be low. And so I kind of am leaning Fowler as my favorite in this range.
So let's just try Straka and Fowler. That leaves us with
Okay.
10-1. That's more money than we need. Although we could just plug in Victor and be on our way.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. It's I mean Victor was very impressive last week. So the really weird thing with Hovland, I don't know if people have noticed this, but he hasn't gained a full stroke off the tee per round since the St. Jude in 2024. And when you look at what he was doing when he was, arguably one of the best players in the world back in 2023 before the swing change, he was consistently gaining over a stroke per round with the driver. Like in or probably around 2/3 of his events, he was gaining that much with the driver. So that's the one thing holding him back right now, but that's also the one thing that is less predictive this week. So if we're going to play Vic, this is a great, great spot to play him, and he also fits your European mold. So,
He is sort of the anti type of European that I was looking for, in fairness.
true, but in terms of just like guys who are used to playing in cold and are going to know their distances pretty well there. I mean, very few guys are as good at distance control as Victor Hovland.
Would Ryan Fox fall in this category?
Maybe, but he looks broken.
Yeah, but he does that until he doesn't. Then he goes hot for 2 months and then turns back into this guy.
Yeah,
One good performance from Fox remind me to be like back all in on Ryan Fox.
I think that's the way to do it. You want to see it first, although you could kind of argue that we just saw it a little bit at the WM, finished 24th, gained over a stroke and a half per round total. But my weird thing with Fox is like, I think the run from the Myrtle Beach win through the Travelers last year, like that to me was the outlier. And everything on either side of that stretch of literally just 6 events, almost in 6 weeks. It was like 6 events in maybe 7 weeks. Uh, Outside of that, he's who we thought he was previously. He's who we think he is now, and that's not that good of a player. So as long as he's still getting some kind of pricing respect and reminiscent of what he accomplished in those 6 weeks, I don't think I have any interest in him.
It's difficult to figure out with him because, like, you go back to 2023 before he was a full time player on the PGA Tour, and he went through one of these runs again. Like he was it was like from basically the Open on. He was like T52 at the Open, T43 at the U.S. Open. Then he starts at the Irish, T3 win, Wentworth win, miscut second, and then just all of a sudden he's at the top of the leaderboard. And he did it, I believe, in 2022 as well. He had a similar type of run. Yeah, he went miscut, WD, miscut, win, miscut, fourth, second, fourth.
It's really weird. So yeah,
like when he gets
you
it,
got to see it for him first. And the question is, do you think that last week qualifies as seeing it from him or not?
I don't know because it's funny to kick off that year before he went into the lull before that other run. He was 61st, 26th, miscut. Then he went 1st, 15th, 9th, 8th, 2nd. Yeah. It's crazy to like see these, and there are certain players who do these things. And again, albeit this was against a weaker type of competition, but we saw him win twice on the PGA Tour last year too. That the moment he gets hot, he gets super hot.
Yeah, and the other weird thing is like it's not like he's been doing it by getting hot in the exact same skill set each time it gets hot. Like, one of those stretches is because the putter just went scorched earth. Another one is because the iron play went scorched earth. So it's weird. Nothing has gone scorched earth yet, though, because like if that's the thing you want to use, there was no skill set at last week's WM where he was outstanding. He just did quite well off the tee, well with the irons, and well with the putter, but nothing great in any category.
All right. Last lineup I want to run by you. I just made it as we were talking. I talked about that Rose, Henley, Xander type lineup. If you do that, you can go Noren, Lowry, Akshay and use all your money.
Yeah. Love it.
I think this is my favorite lineup, which means somehow I'll have a guy with a miscut in a no-cut event.
This lineup, I think one way to put it is this lineup is the antidote to Scottie lineups because all 6 guys have very real upside. They have a very real chance of finishing top 10, finishing top 20, even finishing top 5. You've got at least 3 guys with very real win equity in Rose, Henley, and Schauffele, and we also wouldn't be shocked if any of the other 3 win. So this type of lineup, I think, is just like is a really good way to counter any Scottie lineups because you're taking advantage of the weakness of Scottie lineups and saying, yeah, you have Scottie, but I've got 6 guys with a real chance, and you only have 2 or 3.
And you're fitting in 3 guys that simply cannot be fit into a Scottie lineup.
Correct. Yeah, that's the other point. It's like one of the data points that I didn't mention looking at last week, even though Goddard was only $8,300, it's 26% owned in non-Scottie lineups. So 26% of non-Scottie lineups had the winner. Only 7% of Scottie lineups fit Goddard up in there. So one of the chalkiest players was extremely low owned with Scottie. And that was, again, 8,300, right? That wasn't 9,300 like the guys that we just mentioned. So if it was 9,300, it'd be like 2%, even if the guy was 26% owned overall. So yeah, I think just like a great way to think through the slate. And that's kind of, my favorite part of DFS is just thinking about, okay, well, how can I gain an advantage structurally and not just with the individual players?
Who would you guess are the most common guys set up with Scottie this week? It's probably those low 7s guys.
Yeah, low 7s, upper 6s that we think are going to be popular. And I honestly, I don't have a great read on who that's going to be just yet. Anyone stand out to you as that you expect to be really popular down there?
I don't know if people are going to follow me with Noren, but he's the most logical candidate. He's exactly $7,100, and that's how much you have remaining after Scottie.
Data Golf's projections really like Minwoo and Kitayama, so that's an instant answer for someone who's potentially chalk. But I don't see the field kind of congregating around either of them. So
this seems
I think it'll be pretty spread, honestly.
This seems like the biggest anti-Minwoo course on earth.
He is a good
watch
putter.
him win. He is, but he can't hit an iron. I mean, his short game is amazing, but if you're just not going to be dialed in with your wedges and you can't use your biggest weapon, feels like a problem.
I agree completely. Yes, I agree completely. And honestly, like similar for Kitayama, like right, like he's very good off the tee. Although, man, as someone who had Kitayama this past week, let me tell you, he's got a big miss right now with the driver. Every single drive he hit was either 340 down the middle or 80 yards offline missed right. So
Oh,
there were quite a few. Um,
I know who.
by the way, I don't know
I
if you
know who
had
the
this
answer is
experience.
to the who's being paired with Scottie. It's Patrick Rogers. People love Patrick
Interesting.
Rogers.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that he wasn't more popular last week. Um, But Pat, did you have this experience last week? I felt like every time one of my guys went into the desert, they were in a cactus and taking an unplayable. And anytime anybody else was in the desert, they had a perfect lie and a clear shot at the green with a full swing.
As someone with a pretty hefty wager on Nikolai Højgaard to win, I would agree with that sentiment. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a rough one. He battled like crazy. I needed him both in main slate and showdown, and that was a great rally to get himself back in contention. Although
He
we
brought
could have used a better approach on 15 than the water ball.
yes, or just a better approach. I know he was in the rough on 18, but it wasn't that he just cooked it. He got a flyer lie
Yeah.
and cooked it.
Yeah, I was hoping for the trampled down area that Goddard got, but Nikolai was in a pretty thick spot. It looked like.
Nikolai needs to make use of the rules official, I think.
Yeah. By the way, I saw like a bunch of like quote unquote ethical hooper tweets about Hideki for not even calling a rules official when he clearly could have gotten relief for that little sandy spot right off the cart path. So good for him to just keep it moving.
I think he wanted to hit off of it in a weird way.
It's possible. I mean, we can. It didn't look like the best lie, but maybe our view of it wasn't great, and it's 100% possible he thought I've got a good lie in the sand that's better than hitting out of the rough. So
Well,
it's
well,
possible.
what I think what it was like, if I'm trying to apply my logic to it, because Hideki is one to call a rules official over, so that didn't make a whole ton of sense to me. But that was on 11, right?
No, that was 15.
That was 15. So yeah, he wasn't going to get it there from the rough anyway, right?
Probably correct. Yeah.
So if you're hitting off that like sandy patch, I feel like he can put more spin on that ball, so there's no chance of him like going through.
Yeah, that's a good call, and he was probably still using a long enough iron that if he hit it a little bit thin, it wasn't going further the way it would with a wedge. So that's probably a good call.
Because there was one, it was actually on 11. He was in that rough on the right hand side, and he was somehow able just to stick it on the right side of the green from 188 yards out. It's like, all right, I guess he's missing in the right spots, if nothing else.
That was like the Spieth magic beans, the Scottie magic beans. The Scottie magic beans were in full effect again this week.
14. 14 was full Scottie Magic Beans.
Yeah, but Hideki had them all week as well. Like he had what 3 20-footer, 25-footers, and a chip in the first 7 holes on Sunday. Like, what is that?
Whenever you get written up as the fade of the week in Golf Digest by Pat Mayo, you're going to have a good week.
All right, so who's the fade of the week this week?
I haven't done it yet. Who should be my fade of the week? I always try to pick like someone in the top 5. Some people, I remember the first year we did, the guy who was doing it, he's not in it anymore. I forget what his name was, but he just said, he's like, fade of the week, Jim Furyk. Jim Furyk's odds that week were 200-1. It's like, yeah, no shit, man. He's 200-1. I try to pick someone in the top 5 of odds to fade.
Yes,
Honestly, Rory is probably the best fade this week.
all the credit to you for actually treating fade the way a fade should be treated. I think I'd go Siwoo Kim.
It's a good call, but it hasn't happened in years. But one of these Sundays, he's going to make everything. I've just seen it happen before.
Clarifying question: when you call him a fade, is it this guy's not going to win, or is it this guy's going to like miss the cut or have a really bad week?
No, he's not going to win.
Okay, then yeah, I'd go Siwoo.
What if he does win?
Then we'll all still really enjoy it because we love Siwoo Kim that much.
Well, put it this way. I haven't hit a winner in that column since Min Woo last year in Houston. But if Hideki had won this week, I'd be 2 for 4 in my fades winning a tournament. Because I said fade Scottie at the American Express. Like, yeah, I'm not betting Scottie. Fade of the week.
To be fair to you, like I think your picks to win are probably at longer odds than your fade since you're trying to pick
Yes.
favorites to fade.
Like, I'll probably write up Henley this week. And I think the best Henley number I see, I think I'm going to get him boosted up at Cool Bet, but I can't include that number in it. But I think they're going to give me up to 40-1 on Henley. But I see him at 33s now anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The only outright I have so far is Fitzpatrick.
I went to go bet that early. I didn't like the 35, though, weirdly enough.
I got him at 40, and I think I'm with you. I'm definitely more hesitant at 35.
It's like I wanted to bet Berger, then I saw him at 50, then I was able to grab Straka at like 66 with play. Like I grabbed a lot of guys with placements to kick off the week, and then I figured the guys I like anyway are probably just going to fall. Like Henley is popular, but he opened at 25. He got to 28 pretty quick. I was like, he's just going to fall. Then I'll wait for my boost. Every site starts giving out boosts on Wednesdays anyway. It's like, I'll take that 33 boost up to like 45 or something, and it'll be fine.
What do you think of Spawn as an outright? Because I'm seeing him at 60, and we've got him at 3%. And so, like, if he's not injured, that's a phenomenal bet.
There is a case to make that you just blind fade Ludwig and Spawn this week because they both might be hurt or sick or whatever the hell's going on with them.
So I think my take there is play the outright. Don't play him on DraftKings because there's no downside to playing a hurt guy with an outright. Right? If he's 100% healthy, he's going to lose 97% of the time anyway. So just play it. But in DraftKings, the likelihood that he just stinks and finishes outside the top 40, or even withdraws because he's still hurt and isn't playing well on day two, is too risky to play on DraftKings. But you get all the upside with the outright bet. So I think that's what I'm going to end up doing, playing Spawn in the outright market and just not playing him on DraftKings.
He is cuss one and done this week.
I take it back. Total fade.
I'll write up JJ Spawn, fade of the week. We found the answer. JJ Spawn at 80-1. Yeah, you fade that guy. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and if you give a reasoning for it, like instead of writing 3 sentences on why you're fading because of injury, just say cussed. Nothing else.
You're saving me time too, on top of everything. You're giving me better analysis and you're saving me time. This is perfect.
Beautiful. Love it.
Alex Blickle, check out the Blick Discord. Plus, you can find him over at ftnfantasy.com as well. You can follow me at the PME. The cheat sheet for everything will be available on Wednesday afternoon. If you sub to the Mayo Media newsletter, which is completely free and down in the description, Mayo Media Substack, get it sent directly to you, or you can find it up on X or betsportsgolf.com or on Yahoo Sports as of right now as well. That cheat sheet will be up there. Plus, I'll be doing my live chat, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday night if you have any questions, more so than maybe Alex and I didn't get to exactly what you wanted to know about this week, and then me and Keith in the morning. Stay tuned for that as well. All right, I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!